to another day of vlogmas, everyone. So this video I'm filming actually at the cabin, not my cabin, the cabin that I go on vacation to. And I'm filming it just because I promised you guys I would tell the story, and also I just wanted to get ahead a little of vlogmas. I wish you guys could see the view right now. It's so gorgeous. I'll try to put in a clip of what I'm seeing right now. It's so pretty. I've got Molly behind me. I don't know if you, yeah, there she is. She always has to be near me. So, where do I even start? I mean, I guess there's no way around it. I'm just gonna say COVID in this video so YouTube and its algorithms can do with it what it wants. First and foremost, I just want to say I feel very, very, very lucky to have a job as a YouTuber and a book author, because it meant that when everything shut down in March, I was able to just completely stay at home, order groceries, thanks to people who, you know, put together the deliveries and do all of my work from home. I know that I'm incredibly lucky in regards to that. I guess I'm gonna just tell sort of my experience with COVID. Not that I think that I have any particularly like amazing story to tell. I know that there's so many other people who have truly, you know, gone through just the most horrific times with their family, and I can definitely sympathize with that. As much as I'm upset about losing my grandparents in the last couple of years, my grandfather died in May during all of this, but kind of before it really had picked up in Idaho, and then my grandmother died 2 years ago. And one of the things that I kept thinking about through the whole entire pandemic was that I was just kind of grateful that my grandmother was not in the situation that she was in during the pandemic, because it would have been impossible to go to the facilities where she was, the hospitals, and be with her and care for her. So I can only imagine the people who have had to go through that. I've had to go through that a little bit with my other grandfather who's still alive, being in a memory care unit and not being able to see him. I've seen him like once since March, other than through his window, or I went one time and we had an outdoor visit at the end of the summer, and it was horrible. That's a whole other story. It was terrible. I couldn't hug him. He wanted me to hug him. He's not super verbal anymore. He has Alzheimer's, but it was horrible. And he actually has COVID-19 right now. We're lucky that it didn't hit his facility where he lives until now, but a lot of patients there have it now, and he had a fever for a bit. Now he seems to be not getting worse, but it's still super scary. So yeah, I've known people that have had it, and this story is a story about how I think I might have had it as well. So I got really, really sick way back in January. It was January 26th. Let me see, where do I even start with this story? I had gone to the dentist and I needed a root canal, but there was a tooth right next to where I needed the root canal where I just needed a filling. And so they were like, okay, great, we'll do the filling, and then you can come back like in a week and we'll do the root canal. And so they did the filling, and then that night, it was a Thursday, as the Novocaine was wearing off, I started to feel some swollen lymph nodes in my neck. And I've gone to the dentist so much, that's definitely not a normal thing for me. It was just a massive lymph node right here, and this is the side of my mouth where I had the filling. And so I thought, oh gosh, that's so weird. I must be just having a bad reaction to Novocaine or something like that. So that was Thursday night. Friday, I was okay, I think. I might have felt a little cloudy, but for the most part I was fine. And then in the middle of the night, so this would be Saturday morning, but like truly Friday night at like midnight, it was probably like 3 a.m. I woke up and I was just freezing cold. I was shivering, I was shaking, and I just thought, well, this is the end of January. This is when my cabin gets the coldest. My heat is from propane, and so I just thought, my propane tank is empty. And that's a thing that has happened before, so it wasn't like totally out of the question. If they don't fill the tank at the right time of the month, then if I really crank the heat, it might run out until they fill it. And so I just was lying in bed shaking and shivering and being like, oh no, like my heat is out. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna have to just get through tonight and you know, I wasn't really waking up. I wasn't really with it. I was just kind of like waking up like, oh, I'm so cold. I'm so cold. And then, you know, probably another hour went by and I woke up and I was shaking still. And I was like, now I'm scared. I'm scared about like getting through the night. I've got to like get Pip and Milk and Molly. I have a loft in my cabin. And so I thought, well, if I can get into the bedroom downstairs and shut the door, then I can put on my heating blanket and just put a ton of like the comforters on top of me and dress really warm. The collective heat of 4 creatures being in that little bedroom will probably heat up the room better than upstairs. So I get up and I put on this like really giant robe that YouTube gave me for Christmas last year, and I put on extra socks and a hat, and I put on the heating pad in my bed, and I put on lots of covers, and I get under the covers and I'm shaking, and I look at Pip and I'm like, you're not cold, are you? What temperature is it right now? This is a really long way of saying that basically I was burning up. I had a fever, but I had such a high temperature, you know, you get chills. So I realized that's what this was. And I was like, oh my goodness, I had a thermometer. I took my temperature. It was 103. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, I'm sick. This is crazy. I kind of fell back asleep. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. I was like, okay, at 6 a.m., I'm going to call my dentist, because in my brain, they must have been drilling by the place where I know I need a root canal. And if you know anything about root canals, it's like basically like a lot of nerve pain. And it was like, maybe I have an abscessed tooth. Maybe it's infected now. An infection could definitely be causing a fever. So I managed to just kind of like sleep until 6 a.m. and then I called my dentist's emergency line and I was like, I need help. I feel so terrible. And the dentist called me back at like 7 and was like, listen, it's the weekend. We're not open until Monday, but I have already called in an antibiotic to your pharmacy. If you get on that antibiotic, it should be okay. And then on first thing Monday, we can fit you in for the root canal. So I call my dad. I'm like, Dad, you gotta bring me this antibiotic. I start taking it on Saturday morning at like 10 a.m. and then nothing happens. I don't get better. Saturday night comes, I don't feel better. Sunday comes and I don't feel better. I'm shivering. My temperature is going between 101 all the way up to 102.5, 103, and then down to like 101. And I'm starting to think this is weird. My tooth doesn't actually hurt. Maybe it's not my mouth, but then what would it be? And I was just in this crazy sort of desperate place where I was taking ibuprofen and the antibiotic on clockwork, and it just wasn't doing anything. I felt so ill. And so then Sunday night, I was like, I've got to go to urgent care. Drove to urgent care. They did a strep test, which I don't know why they did a strep test. I told them, I was like, I've had strep throat all the time as a kid. That's why I had my tonsils out. I don't have strep throat. And they did the strep test anyway. I was like, fine, do it. And that was negative. They gave me like a shot of basically I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was essentially like a pain medication, because I was just like, I can't get through a night. Like, I'm not getting sleep. So they gave me the pain shot, and that of course made me feel better. And I went home, and basically they were just like, you just need to go to the dentist. You need to go to your dentist and find out what's going on. So that was Sunday night. So Monday morning, first thing, I go to my dentist. I'm still in the YouTube robe. I've been wearing it since Friday night. And I go into the dentist chair, and of course they're all wearing gloves and masks and everything. And the dentist actually asks me, this was of course, like I said, very end of January. Things were just starting to happen in Wuhan, China. My dentist actually says, have you been to China recently? And I was like, haha, no. Because at that point I was really starting to almost, when you have a cold or a flu, just as far as I'm concerned, sometimes it's like, yeah, it's your fever can spike for a little bit, but then it breaks and you're able to get a couple hours of rest and you feel a little bit better. None of that was happening to me. I was feeling horrible still. And it was almost starting to mess with me psychologically, I feel like, because I just felt so hopeless. I just felt like, oh my gosh, this feeling is never going away. I can't get any relief. I'd started taking Tylenol, which I think last time I took it for the flu kind of made me break out in a bit of a rash when I took too much. So I was trying to be careful, but I'm trying to take Tylenol and ibuprofen, and I'm still taking this antibiotic and nothing's helping. So I just am crying in the dentist, and I'm just like, yank the tooth out. I don't care. And he pokes around in my mouth and he's like, I do not see an infection. I do not think that this is an infection. I think this is viral. That's why I was joking if you've been to China, because I don't see anything that's wrong with your filling or the tooth that needs the root canal. And I was sobbing. I told them to take x-rays. I was like, take an entire mouth x-ray. They did. And they were like, no, nothing looks inflamed. You should maybe consider going back to the doctor. And so I left the dentist just completely in tears. I mean, it sounds so dramatic to say now, and I've been back to the dentist since, and we've joked about it, because I actually said to him, you don't understand. Honestly, I feel bad making this video because there are people who are having it so much worse. But at the time, I had like a little saying to myself at night when I would be trying to fall asleep but having all these chills, and it was like, I would welcome death. Not in a serious way, obviously, because I love my life. My point is it was unrelenting, and I didn't know what it was. So I left the dentist and I called my doctor, like my general doctor, and I said, I am so ill. And by the way, not even for a second did I think that this could potentially be COVID. I still don't know if it was. I'll get to the antibody tests in a minute. But not in a million years did I think it, because it was like I said, it was January. No one was wearing masks. No one thought that it was in the US. I do believe now I've seen that they have confirmed that there were cases in California. Oh, that's the thing I hadn't said about this, is that I did go to Los Angeles at the very beginning of the year, but that was 3 weeks ago at this point. So I call my doctor and I'm like, I have to come in. You have to help me. This was Monday afternoon. I just been to the dentist and they said, okay, you can come in first thing on Tuesday. So I had another crazy night of chills and fever. I go into the doctor on Tuesday. This is the first day that I'm sort of feeling not like I'm actually dying. Had I known that there was a potential that it could be not just the flu, maybe I would have taken it more seriously, but I really was like, I'm tough. I can just tough it out in my cabin. But it was really getting to me. So I went into the doctor and they did a flu test for influenza A and B, and it was negative. And that was the moment where it was like, what's wrong with me? I found the paperwork like a couple days ago, and it was literally like, patient presents with cough, fever, chills, body aches, muscle fatigue. It doesn't sound great from what I told the doctor when I went and visited the doctor's office. So anyway, they did a flu test. It was negative, and they literally said to me, well, first off, they said, have you been out of the country at all? And I said, no, I've not been out of the country. And they were like, well, it just must be some mysterious virus. Sometimes you get a cold, sometimes you get influenza, sometimes you can just get another strain of something that you don't have antibodies for or something. So they really didn't help very much. She was like, do you want some cough syrup? Do you want some eye drops? It's like, no. But I wasn't feeling as horrible, so I went home and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna treat this like just any other thing now, and I'm just gonna stay in bed for days, and I will drink so much water, I will drink Gatorade, and I will just hope that I'm fine. It's not the flu, maybe it's just the really, really bad cold. And like I said, nowhere in a million years did I think it was COVID. So anyway, I did that, and that was, I want to say, like a whole week almost of just being in bed and cold cloth on my head. Anyway, I recovered. And then it was my grandfather's 100th birthday. This is now the beginning of February. And he had been planning a party. This is my grandfather that sadly passed away in May, just from old age, not from COVID. But anyway, my grandfather's 100th birthday. I'm thinking, you know, I feel better. I don't want to miss this. I had ordered all these little like Coca-Cola bottles that said happy 100th birthday, and I wanted to deliver them. And so my dad agreed to drive up with me, and I wore a mask. I still had a mask from when I had gone to the doctor's office, because as soon as I came in and started answering the questions about my symptoms, they made me put on a mask. So I still had a mask, and I wore it to my grandfather's birthday party. The amount of questions I got, because like I said, this was very beginning of February, and people said, why are you wearing a mask? I said, listen, I was very sick. Again, COVID was nowhere in the discussion with this, but I just said to people, I said, trust me, you do not want what I just had. And I would never forgive myself if I gave it to my 100-year-old grandfather. It was either come here and wear a mask or not come. And, you know, my grandfather he's been wanting to turn 100. He had been wanting to turn 100 probably his whole life. It was a goal for him, and it was a very special moment. And I wanted to be there. But just the drive up alone to his house is about a 2.5-hour drive. I did nothing. I just sat in the car with my dad. I sat in the car and just drove up, and then I stopped at Walmart because I wanted to get bottle openers for all the miniature Coke bottles that I had. And I walked into Walmart, and I'd probably been standing for like 5 minutes, and I was like, I'm gonna collapse. I was just looking for my dad. He was like getting something else in Walmart, and I remember just starting to cry and just being like, I've got to get out of here. My muscles are so weak from just holding myself up in a car for 2.5 hours and then walking into Walmart. I don't feel sick anymore, but I physically am going to fall down. I felt like such a loser. I just was crying because it was like, why does my body feel like this? I should be fine. I'm recovered from whatever I had. So anyway, I find my dad, I like hold on to him, I get out to the car, I rest up until we get to the party, and then I go into the party. Didn't even hug my grandfather, was like, hi, took a picture, and then like saw some of my family members and then left and went home, and I think slept for another like 2 days. But anyway, yeah, people literally were like, why are you wearing a mask? Because it was just ahead of the COVID curve. Little did we all know in like another month and a half, there was gonna be an insane shortage of masks for the medical community, and people were going to be hoarding masks, and everyone was going to want to have a mask. I guess part of this video is just saying sort of what my experience has been with the actual lockdown, which didn't really happen in Utah, but basically I went on book tour at the very beginning of March. I remember messaging my publisher and saying, are we good to go? I'm going on 10 airplanes to all these different cities, hugging thousands of people, signing books, getting gifts, taking pictures. And I did that. It was like March 2nd until like the 9th or 10th. And then right after that is when they just shut down everything. And I remember my flight was booked home to my mother. My mom was watching Molly, and I was going to get in, spend a couple days at her house, and then drive home. And I remember being like, oh my goodness, I just went on 10 different airplanes in like 6 days. So I said, I have to quarantine immediately. So I literally was driven to my mom's house. She came out of her house, threw me my car keys that were in her driveway, and like pushed Molly out the door. And I was like, bye. This was like midnight. I drove to a cheap hotel and slept in the bed, wiped things down, and then left, drove straight to a Walmart, spent like $300. This was March 12th maybe, or 13th. Spent like $300 on sanitizer and groceries and all the things that you could possibly get. There were still a lot of things available at that moment. Some people were stocking up, but a lot of people just weren't. And then drove to the cabin. I have not eaten at a restaurant. I've gotten takeout. I've gotten groceries delivered. I have gone to grocery stores with a mask and run errands. I've done some things like that, but haven't been on a plane since March, which is wacky for me. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of what happened, but I didn't get sick. I'd gone on that entire book tour to cities all over the US and didn't get a thing. People were giving me hand sanitizer, and there was a sweet dad who gave me gloves and masks Thank you to that dad, because I used those at gas stations for a long time. I donated some too. I gave them to Pip's veterinarian. But the point is that I have been fine. Around April is when I started thinking like, oh my gosh, did I have COVID? There were a lot of people that said, oh yeah, I got really sick at the end of January. I thought maybe it was the flu. I've talked to so many people who had that experience. And so I started making phone calls. I called the people who were, you know, dealing with COVID for the state of Utah. And I said, listen, I have a negative strep test and I have a negative influenza test for this day. And these were my symptoms. And they were like, yeah, we want to test you for antibodies. So I think I got an antibody test in Utah the very first week that antibody tests were available. And I went to get it. It was a blood draw. And the doctor was talking to me, the nurse, and was like, you flew through LAX at the beginning of the year? And I said, yes. And they said, well, that's essentially, if you spent time there, which I did, I hung out in the airport lounge. They were like, that's essentially leaving the country. Like, you were in one of the most popular international airports for an extended period of time. I still don't know if I had COVID or not. Maybe I didn't. Maybe it was just the craziest weird virus that is not COVID. My antibody test came back inconclusive. So I don't know, maybe if any of you guys are studying medicine, you'll know, but there's a scale for the blood, and they said anything 0.7 or lower, so like 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, all the way up to 0.7 means you do not have the antibodies. 0.8, 0.9, and a 1 means inconclusive. We cannot definitively say yes or no. And then anything above a 1, so a 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 above, means you definitely have the antibodies. So the only way to get an inconclusive is a 0.8, a 0.9, or a 1. And guess who was a 1? Me. And I told my doctor, I said, can I take another one? And he was like, well, why? Like, you're recovered. I said, just because I'm genuinely curious. What does a 1 mean? And he was like, well, technically a 1 is positive. It means that you probably came in contact with the virus, but it's in that gray area where we have to say, it could just be the test. And maybe it was just the test. Or according to my doctor, maybe it was that I just had it in March briefly. But as I said to the doctor, maybe it's the time in the end of January, early February where I thought I was going to die. I don't know. That's all to say. I don't know. And again, if you're still here listening, I hesitated to share this story even. I'm sharing it now, but like I didn't even bring this up at the time because I didn't want anyone to think that I was doing it to be like, I might have had COVID, clickbait. I didn't even plan on ever telling this story because it's just not a scientifically sound thing. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Now I'm thinking like, wow, am I really uploading this to YouTube? I really don't know if I want to. Anyway, that's it for my story time. I'm glad that I'm fine. I'm lucky that I can continue to work from home. I think that it sounds like they're doing amazing things on the vaccine front. I continue to wear a mask just because I think, for me, ever since the very beginning of February, when I wore a mask to my grandfather's birthday party, the mask has not represented anything to me except for a social contract that we should just, as humans, for the next year with a new coronavirus, at the very least, just commit to not sneezing on one another. I think that that's a really doable commitment. I personally don't get the outrage over masks. I don't want to sneeze on you. I don't want to be sneezed on. Maybe next year. Maybe in 2021. Maybe I'll go to Disney again and I'll welcome a sneeze from a stranger. That sounds ridiculous, right? Who would want to be sneezed on by someone else? That's just my take on it. I think masks are a good thing. And again, huge appreciation to all of the people who have worked in the medical field since March. My goodness, the things that they've had to see and put up with, unfathomable to me. I'm very, very lucky to live the life that I live. So that's my crazy story time. I hope you liked it. and yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow.